Next up, we have Band Protocol, and have Saravis joining us today from the team to give us an update on some of their latest developments.
Thanks again for having me. Special shout out again to Miss Aries and the whole team for throwing this together. Quite an awesome feat. I'm quite excited. And it's quite a unique and difficult time for all of us. But it's good to finally get everyone together here. So yeah, now that I guess everyone's seen my screen, I'm gonna get started. As a quick introduction, so my name is Saravis. Again, slightly difficult to pronounce. I'm the co-founder of Band Protocol. As a quick background, I'm an engineer by training. So I did computer science at Stanford. That's sort of when I got into the whole cryptographies and got into Bitcoin around 2013. Fast forward around 2015, I worked as a management consultant at BCG, driving some digital transformations from a lot of companies around the world. And then on the side, me and my co-founders, after having invested into Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, sort of got together, built a mobile games that reward players in cryptocurrencies. So you play some games and then you earn free Bitcoin and Ethereum. Right? We grew that to about 800,000 users before we sort of sold that business in 2017, and that's when we jumped off the the full-time job and then started Band Protocol. Okay, so that's I guess it's a quick history on how we came to be. And quickly about Band Protocol before we dig deeper into it. We are an Oracle solutions. Essentially, what we do is we create and connect off-chain data and API to smart contract using our upcoming delegated proof of stake Band chain, which is essentially based on Cosmos. Right? And so far, we raised about $11 million in fundraising from Sequoia Capital, Luna Moon Partners, which is a Korean traditional VCs backed by Kakao, and own a bit, one of the largest Korean exchange, and Finance Launch had, as well as a few other investors around the world. We're stock from India, CX from Southeast Asia, Spartan from Hong Kong and US, SNC from China. So we try to have quite a global pool of backers that support us. So that's a quick introduction. Now let's get into the meat of this presentation. Okay. What we're trying to solve, right? Essentially, if you look at the smart contract world right now, ironically, they are not that smart, right? Smart contract on blockchain is a deterministic, it's really good at deterministic computation. But it requires a lot of the data that live outside of the blockchain, right? Or what we like to call external data and API, right? And unfortunately, because they are deterministic, these smart contracts have no easy way to get access to this Web2 API. So for example, any data from Google Map, financial data from Bloomberg, Thomson Reuters, these are difficult and literally impossible for smart contracts to do it alone, right? And if you look at the use cases right now, right, I can say that over 90% of the use cases of these smart contracts will require some sort of data from external world, right? Either that be financial data, as we see in the decentralized finance. You look at prediction market, you look at gaming. They require a lot of the real world event data, like sport event, e-sport, things like that. And eventually, if you want to move into the world where mass adoption is coming and smart contract become more useful, these smart contract will need to be able to interface with a lot of these real world data to make their use case much more expansive, right? So that's what we enable at Band Protocol. We built a solution to connect the smart contract, moving from the world where the smart contract or era that there's only token transfer and interaction simply within the blockchain world, right? When we see a lot of ICOs back in 2017, fast forward to 2020. A lot of DeFi's are picking up, a lot of smart contract use cases are picking up, and all of them will require Oracle to sort of provide that service to connect external data to the smart contract itself. Okay. And if you look at the use cases right now, again touching on a lot of these decentralized finance, for every vertical from stablecoin like Maker, they will require cryptocurrency price feed to determine the CDP conditions. You have a lot of decentralized lending that are picking up steam, again, needing an Oracle to determine the collateral required. You start to see more emerging market from derivative like synthetics, or insurance market like Nexus Mutual, A lot of these, again, will require access to, beyond even cryptocurrency price feed, but to real world, let's say stock prices, commodities, ETF, right? And we are seeing a lot more emerging use cases around these ideas around the world. And that's not just on top of Ethereum's, but also across different other layer one solutions, right? And then the last vertical, decentralized exchange, most of them are currently limited by, either most of them are spot orders, right? Either you are a liquidity pool like Kyber, AMM model, or you are an order book like 0x. But if you can add an Oracle component to that, you can also determine some sort of trade execution conditions, like adding a stop limit order, some conditional offer order that you can add in and enhance that capabilities, right? So these are some of the research areas that we have been working with, some of the use cases that require Oracle. And we are quite bullish that as decentralized finance is growing, there will be much more demand for an Oracle solution, fully decentralized Oracle solution that are able to secure a lot of these value at stake within the smart contract, right? So that's a quick background on Oracle. Now let's talk more about how Ben actually solved that problem, right? So the first solution that we launched, we actually launched our first Oracle solution on Ethereum 9 months ago. And we learned a lot of lessons from that, right? Namely, 2 or 3 things. One is around the flexibilities of data, right? In 2017, when we started to build this, most of the data requests center around price of Bitcoin or price of Ethereum, right? And that was really limited. So in our old model, it was really fixed. But fast forward now in 2020, we start to see much more niche and customized use cases, right? You see Maker expanding into other asset class. You see synthetics expanding into stock and other real world asset, right? And not to mention 10 and 20 and many more projects that are coming out that require much more custom and niche applications. And that's why what we did is we essentially took a Cosmos blockchain and then built a custom Oracle script on top of that called BandChain, right? What this Oracle script does is essentially any DApps can submit a data request into a BandChain. Think of it almost like a really optimized smart contract, right? In a sense that you can submit a data request. You can ask for what data do you want. You can specify, what sources do you need. So let's say I want price of Bitcoin. I can say I want it from Binance. I want it from CoinMarketCap, CoinGecko, Coinbase, right? For example, you can specify how many validators, or essentially the Oracle node that perform the job. How many do you require? So in our BAM chain, let's say we have 100 set of validators. You may say I only want 50 or 100, right? Because that's good enough for me in terms of my securities, right? Whereas for a low value contract like betting applications, you may say I only want 5 out of 100 validators to report me back because I don't need that much securities and I want speed and cheaper cost, right? So you can customize a lot of this trade-off with band protocol. And then eventually, once you get all this data, you can also write how to aggregate this data, right? So in a traditional sense, most Oracle right now and use cases use medianizers. So you medianize all the data, right? But with our BAM chain, you can also customize this. Instead of just saying straight up medianize, you can say if all the data returned have 1% deviation or 0.5% deviation, then revert this transaction. It will never happen, right? You can customize all these parameters and logic within the BAM chain Oracle script. And that make it much more scalable for us to address a lot of the long tail of use cases from around the world, right? Instead of running a fixed set of node, instead of running a fixed set of data requests, we run it as almost like a generic Oracle script where anyone can write it themselves to address all the need that they want, right? So how does that work? Essentially, you submit that request, the data query gets sent to the validators. They perform the job by fetching the data from the sources, so building redundancies in the data source. And then these validators essentially return the result into the BAM chain. So all the computation happen on the BAM chain itself, right? Then finally, when you have the result, you submit the result and the proof into the destination blockchain. So whether that be Ethereum's, Polkadot, Zelos, all these layer one smart contract can easily consume our data and verify that it's actually come from BAM chain and that it is authenticated, right? So you require only one transaction to go through the destination blockchain. So with that said, as you know, we are, with this new architectures, we're building a global pool of 100 nodes so that we have a lot of redundancies. And what is important is that all of these validators need to stake the BAM tokens in order to have a crypto economic guarantee at the protocol level, right? Because these validators essentially have to stake a lot of BAN tokens to become a validators. If they act maliciously and collude to sort of attack the system, they risk losing some of this BAN token, both directly from slashing or indirectly through the depreciation of the BAN value if nobody trusts it, right? And everything can be verifiable on chain, which make it much more secure as well, right? We talk about the flexibility. So again, you can customize all of this, cater to your needs. The fact that we are on BAN chain, which is based on Cosmos, we are quite scalable. So all of this computation take place less than 6 seconds, and you only require one transaction to go through, right? So in that sense, if the network is congested like the Black Thursday, we only require just one final transaction to go through the Ethereum network, which is much easier than having to send through 20 transactions each from Oracle network that live within the Ethereum ecosystem, right? So that's something that we try to differentiate ourselves. Cost, again, because we run it on BAN chain, this cost will really based on demand and supply, similar to how you price gas fee on top of Ethereum. And we talk about this, in terms of congestion, that make us much easier to sort of address a lot of these congested network that happen on Ethereum or any other destination blockchain. And finally, because we run all this off-chain, right, we can actually settle this on-chain instantly to the destination blockchain. That means instead of a reference data, we can actually put this along with the user transaction to make sure the data is as real-time as possible. So just to summarize, right, a couple of unique features that we try to add into this Oracle space. We want to make sure we are fully decentralized. Everyone have to stake tokens, and they have those at stake. Right? 2, we are really flexible in terms of the Oracle script, allow end-to-end customizabilities. We are really scalable using the Cosmos blockchain. And then finally, we try to enable much more real-time data using this bashing transaction. In terms of development, we've been working really hard to, taking a lot of feedback from our partners, and we are quite happy that to share. That's why we are part of this Mainnet event as well. We are launching our new Mainnet on June 10, and it will be on a continuous basis. Essentially, from June 10 to June 30, we will launch our new Mainnet, as well as continuing to onboard more validators, continue to onboard more ecosystem partners, and hopefully, we're going to grow our usages and drive adoption into our platforms after the Mainnet is launched. And quickly, I know I have 1 minute left, just to share in the grand scheme of things, of course, as an Oracle Solutions, right now, we are working on connecting public API, so API that lives on the internet, in a public domain into smart contract, right? And that fit well with most use cases right now. But going forward, what is exciting about us in the next few years is that there are 2 more phases that we want to research, right? Phase 2 and phase 3, which come down to, in phase 2, we want to bring in more private data, essentially data behind paywall, so that a lot of these smart contract can consume this authenticated or premium API, right? And then the third part, which is authenticated data, what we envision is, as an Oracle solution, we're not going to play a role just not as an input from the real world to the blockchain, but we also become an output from the blockchain world to the real world event, such as trigger some payment, trigger some real world event, and that is something that really excites us in the next few years. If Oracle is able to do that, it will really lead the way and pave the way for mass adoption of smart contract and make them much more useful. And I think I'm up. Yeah, finally, again, we have a long-term plan to drive much more usages and traction. We have been doing a lot of integration with a lot of projects, not just on top of Ethereum, but across many layer 1 solutions, doing much more community outreach, working with enterprises to research on phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, right? And securities and privacy will continue to be our #1 priorities in the years to come. And that's it. I think that's a quick rundown of BAN protocol. Thanks, Mr. Aries, again for throwing this together and allows me to share this update.
Excellent, quick and informative. That was a lot packed in there. Really appreciate it.
A lot of things. Yes, I know I have 15 minutes.
So yeah, we have a good amount of time for some Q&A. So before we address the elephant in the room that is Chainlink, I'll ask, why did you opt to build on a Cosmos chain, a Tendermint based chain? One, I mean, kind of explain a little bit with the reasoning why you wanted to go build on your own chain, and then two, why Cosmos, why Tendermint, why not some of the other?
Right. So actually, when we were deciding on that platforms, right, we were working on multiple things, substrate and demand, and I think it came down to the two things, right? One is the readiness of the protocol as well. So we've been working quite closely with Cosmos. We know it was going to launch on a specific date. We know that we don't have to depend entirely on different chain, right? Because if they're not live, essentially, then our roadmap will have to be contingent upon their success as well, right? So that was number one in terms of the readiness, the coding, right? We evaluated quite a lot of trade-off, right? Number two, I think Cosmos and the Tendermint SDK allows two things. One is the cross-chain compatibility easily with the IBC protocol, right? We've been working with the team quite closely to do that. We were one of the first to implement that on our chain already, right? So that's something that excites us, as well as what our other partners have been doing, like Terra in Korea, Binance Chain. With Binance, there's a lot of these ecosystem partners that we take a lot of input from, and that's why we decide to use Cosmos as a base for us.
Excellent. Yeah, we like the team over there. They had a great update earlier today, so looking forward to IBC finally launching on Mainnet. That's going to be exciting development there.
For sure.
Yeah. Within the protocol, whenever you're making calls from the DeFi side over to get outside information on chain, how does that work? Is there a fee payment to validators on the band protocol, and how is that how is that fee denominated?
Right. So the fee essentially are denominated in band, right?
Okay.
Similar to how ETH are being paid as a gas to Ethereum, right? You can think of band as a fee that you want to run any computation on band chain. You need to pay band as a computation fee. So if your data requests get more complex, adding more validators, adding more sources, it will be more expensive, right? But also at a trade-off of more securities, right? To your query, right? Now, in terms of how the app actually use that and try to abstract away from that, right? There are two ways of doing that. One is essentially, they can work with us to essentially run a bot to keep. Let's say some of the use cases say I want a reference data every 10 minutes, right? So we can back calculate what is the cost per month, and with that, we run a bot to essentially have band tokens and then keep paying the validators every 10 minutes to do that queuing, right? And then submit that into the destination blockchain as a reference data, so anyone can use that. Right. Mm-hmm. And then the second part that some other projects also prefer is you can pay per query. So essentially, in a front end application, right, before users submit the transaction, when they click the buttons, essentially that submit one transaction, go through the band chain, pay the in-band token again, get the result back, use that result, pack it into the as an argument, right, in the function call into the smart contract, let's say on Ethereum, right. That ensures that the data is really, really real time. And there's no delay when it comes to congestion, right? So that's those type of model that we have been experimenting with some of our partners as well.
Excellent. I answer my next question too, because I was wondering, how the user experience would look like. So no, that's great. Right. I have a question from Malik here in the chat. He wants to know: do you see IBC becoming some kind of standard across all blockchains, or are there other initiatives on your radar that do something similar?
Right. I think a lot of both IBC and Polkadot, right? Namely, these two projects are trying to work on a lot of this cross-chain compatibilities, right? Mm-hmm. With their pilot chain and pilot, right? I think both of these will finally sort of converge into some sort of semi-bridge solution together, where we'll finally see a lot of these bridges being implemented, both from not just between Cosmos and Polkadot, but also across Ethereum's and other layer one solutions. I don't believe a world where one solution would dominate all, right? I do believe that IBC will play an important role across many different blockchains, as well as other bridges that people are building. And a good security practice is not to rely on one solution building by one company, right? And I think the world is converging where people are trying to collaborate on a lot of these efforts, and we see a lot of these actually behind the scene. And I'm quite hopeful and confident that in the coming months we'll see much more of this collaborative approach, even with two projects that seem to be competing with each other.
Yeah, great answer. And I think that was something that was kind of reiterated in a lot of the panels earlier today, especially as these networks become more decentralized and more teams start joining the platform, you're going to see that cross collaboration between different projects even more so, which be interesting to see because
Definitely, yeah. It's better
so
for everyone, right? Yeah.
yes, yeah, I exactly agree. Yeah, whatever's gonna be best for the developers and users, ultimately interacting with these platforms and underlying technologies. Um, so I guess now is a good time to jump in. So obviously, one of the other major Oracle networks out there is Chainlink, and so I was wondering, how do you view Chainlink, and how do you view yourself in the competitive landscape, and what kind of advantages, disadvantages would Chainlink offer compared to Ban? How are they different?
Right. Yeah, that's the elephant in the room. We get that really often. Look, I think for us, right, as I expressed my opinion in terms of IBC versus Polkadot as well, right, we don't really view Chainlink as a competitors in the sense that, both of us are working to secure, smart contract and make sure they are, have the highest securities, right? For us, what that means is if you look at the smart contract right now, there are two segments. One is the high value stake contract, right? So a lot of the DeFi that have hundreds of millions of dollars in their protocol, right? What that means is for them, they need the highest standard of securities. It doesn't make any sense for them to outsource that securities component to one Oracle company, including bank, right? We don't envision the world where, Maker, we rely on Ban solely because if we, somehow for whatever reason we malfunction, right, then that's a big problem, right, for a lot of value at stake. So we see a lot of these solutions converging into using multiple solutions, using different Oracle with different trade-off to make sure we can cross-check the data and make sure we are getting as close as 100% security as possible, right? So that's number one. So we don't see it as a competing solution. Rather, we view it as really complementary, right? And then the second part, which is a low, I guess, a long tail of use cases with lower value at stake, right? Betting, audit prediction market, other, really niche applications, in trends included. All of this, we start to see it popping out, across the world, right? And yes, with them, maybe it doesn't make sense to use both Oracle. But what makes sense for me is obviously one, companies will not be able to address all the the needs and help. It's like B2B, right? You will not be able to address all the companies around the world. And I think we do have differentiation when it comes to Asian market. We do see differentiation when we try to help a lot of these Asian projects that are coming to market. A lot of these solutions that are coming from many different layer one solutions. And of course, I really admire Chainlink. I'm a link holder as well. I invest in a lot of different tokens.
Like Marines.
And I admire Sergey a lot. They're a really good team, right? And I mean, ultimately, again, Oracle problem is not something that can be solved 100%. It's not 100% verifiable with mathematics, right? So that means a lot of this protocol will have to make trade-off. And this trade-off then will translate to different use cases from these different projects, and that's why for me, we look at us as more about complementaries, and hopefully we can address a lot of these long-tail use cases with our flexibilities.
Fantastic answer. Really, really appreciate it. We're running up on time. Really quickly, how can people stay in touch with you and keep up to date with all the developments on Ban?
For sure. So we have our blog on Mediums. Our website is up to date. We have a really wide brand communities on Telegram, Twitters. The usual crypto channel. So you can stay on that. We have Discord as well for some of the developers, validators to discuss. So I guess the best place is to go to our website. There's all the link there.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Really appreciate the time. Thanks for joining us. And
awesome. Thank you again, Wilson.
Yep, we'll definitely be in touch. Take care.
For sure. Cheers. Bye, guys.